Ann O'Connell with OC Publishing coming at you live. And today is the author journey, and we're happy to have a very, very special guest with us. We have Red O'Loughlin, who is an author, but primarily a researcher who studies the human body, looking for cause and effect relationships, chemically speaking. He fell in love with chemistry in his sophomore year in high school and earned a degree in chemistry. He didn't continue in that field because he joined the Navy, but after more than 30 years of service, he retired as a naval officer and revitalized his love of chemistry. He began to research and write about chemical relationships in our bodies with a focus on longevity and age-related diseases. He's an international speaker, published author, book coach, and independent publisher. He has published 7 of his own books and dozens more for other authors. He leads his local chapter of the Nonfiction Authors Association and also hosts several shows on health and wellness on USA Global TV and Radio Network, which is how we met through Dr. Jacqueline. We'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later. Please welcome Red O'Loughlin to the author journey. Hi, Red.
Hi, Ann. Howdy, all y'all out there.
And where are you coming to us from? You're in Texas, but
I'm in a little city called Missouri City, Texas, but it's a suburb of Houston, Texas, about 20, 25 miles southwest of downtown. But it goes royals long, far past me, so it's a big city. But I like the y'all. It just seems to be so wherever we're at around. So anyway, I like it.
I love it. And I have a couple of Texas authors that I work with. So, I've heard that term many, many times. Hi, y'all.
So people don't know the plural of y'all because you use y'all quite a bit, but all y'all is the plural of y'all.
All y'all, of course it is. Oh, I love that. And that's a nice grammar lesson to start off the author journey. And I love your background image, like as a naval aviator. I assume that has some significance.
When I got my degree in chemistry, I got an invitation to Vietnam, and so I joined the Navy, and I was fortunate enough to pick P-3 aircraft, which is patrol, anti-submarine warfare, and our mission mainly surface surveillance of the infiltrator trawlers coming from North Vietnam to the south. And so I was stationed in the Philippines, Cam Ranh Bay, Vietnam, and Utapao, Thailand. And we'd spend 10 days in each location for months at a time, go back and forth. And I got out of the Navy after 2 deployments, joined the reserves for 20 years, then went back on active duty for 6 years. So I have 16 years of flying, about 4,200 flight hours, and not quite 1,000 flights altogether.
Wow. Well, with all of that incredible experience, I'm surprised you haven't written a memoir. Is that in the works, possibly?
It really and truly is. I've been giving a lot of thought to it. There's a lot to do for something like that. I've done a couple publishing books for other people's. And sometimes you say, well, just your family background's a book by itself. And then you look at your career and it can be literally a book by itself. And then I look at my military with all that I've done. I've been to 61 countries in the world.
Wow.
I left the military. I was deputy director of reserve affairs in Stuttgart, Germany. And I had roughly 5,500 reservists that I had responsibility for in 89 countries in Europe and Africa. And so it was interesting. Everywhere I went, there was something you could literally write about. And so from that perspective, I've always wanted to do something like that. I just haven't. But it's in the cards, whether it's one book, a summary, a bunch of ebooks, I don't know. It's going to happen.
Oh my gosh. And in your spare time, right?
Well, I look at my whiteboard and I see quite a few books. I got another dozen or so that I'm working on, and memoir's not one of them.
Wow. Well, and let's shift and talk about the subject matter that you do write about. Health and wellness, longevity, and you also have a book out on understanding Alzheimer's. Personally, as a caregiver and daughter of a 99-year-old who does have dementia, I mean, it's a struggle to really understand, and it's so complex. Like, what made you write that book, and
Well,
how does that come into?
my wife came down with breast cancer just about 10 years ago. And part of that process as a caregiver was, what can
Mhm,
I do to help make her life better? And so I reluctantly, even though I really love chemistry, I reluctantly started, let me do some research here, there, and yonder. And all of a sudden, I find myself back into Google looking at, okay, well, tell me more about this. And
mhm,
when I worked for Halliburton, one of my jobs was to do a root cause analysis, and I would look at, okay, what failed, and then you say, why did it fail? Okay, why did that happen? Okay, why did that? And you go down about 7 levels of why as to why
mhm,
is the real root cause of that failure. Because if you're going to fix something, you need to address the root cause of the issue, not just putting band-aids on a symptom. And
mhm.
so that part of my job kind of influenced my brain. So when I was looking at, yeah, I can give my wife this or that or whatever, but it's not necessarily fixing the cause of the problem. And if you go into any kind of disease, you look at chronic low level cellular inflammation. That inflammation
Mhm.
left untreated becomes oxidative stress, which becomes another problem and another problem. And eventually it ends up into your heart, into your gut, into your brain, into wherever in the body it is.
Wow.
So
Mhm,
how do you shut down that chronic low level cellular inflammation? That is the key. And so as you're looking at things now, the disease may have progressed so far that you have absolutely no options. But if you have the early onset, excuse me, there are things that
bless
can
you.
be done. One of the things that I noticed, particularly with Alzheimer's, is that our bodies over time, we're not making as much stuff that we used to
Mhm,
make. One of them is phosphatidylserine, and we have 4 phospholipids in the body. You can buy a pill that it has that 100%. And my brother-in-law, who's a Catholic priest, was retired because he got so bad he couldn't even manage the church he was in. Well, he was living with
mm.
his younger brother, and we put him on that. And less than 2 months, he could tell you what he had for breakfast, what was on TV last night, what he planned on watching tonight. And again, it became a band-aid because there's more than one cause of a disease. And so we tackled that one, but there are other things out there. So when I wrote my book on Alzheimer's, I was researching, what are all the different things. If I'm looking at oxidative stress, what am I looking to counter that? If I'm looking at something else over here, what counters that? And so if I can go up to the plaques and the mood, everything that happens, what is the step behind that one and the step behind that one? And that's where I
Mhm.
use my chemistry background to find out, well, if I can shut this one down or slow it down, then maybe this won't happen. And so
Wow.
that's the whole basis of what I speak about, what I write about, and really what gives me joy, because it's really and truly my passion. I love doing that kind of research.
Oh, that's incredible. And, taking that expertise and making it understandable to, the layperson, I think is a real gift. And so when you talk about longevity, like, don't we all want to live healthier longer? Not just longer, but longer and healthier. Talk a little bit about, that what why that has been a popular um, topic or theme.
Well, my dad always thought the worst thing could happen was to die. Don't ask me why. You know, to me, I don't want somebody changing my diaper for the last 10 years of my life.
No,
To me,
right.
you don't want to be a burden on other people. And I think that's more the key than it is anything else. So
Mhm,
if we were in the same shape we are right now today, fully self-sufficient, yeah, we may be taking pills or something. But if we can maintain that all the way up until 95, 105 years of age, I think we'd
mhm,
probably feel good about ourselves. So you look at what causes aging. And
mhm.
there are, from what I've seen, two primary causes. One of them is a thing called human growth hormone. When we're a toddler, we're making it left and right, and we can't make it. That's why we're growing so fast when we're little. And you get up to the teenage years and it starts slowing down a little bit, and you get in your 20s and 30s and it slows more. So our body doesn't make as much of it. So when you get into your 60s and 70s, you're barely making any at all. But
Mhm.
fasting overnight, 24-hour fast, almost doubles or triples the amount of HGH the body makes. You go on
Oh,
do
wow.
high intensity interval training, it makes a lot. So there's a lot of things you can do in order to increase the body's human growth hormone. So that's one of
Hmm.
the two primary causes. So you keep that HGH elevated, and now all of a sudden you have somebody in the room who's in control of things, because when everything is not producing the way it should, it chaos happens, and that's when you start to go with a lot of problems. At the end of
Hmm.
your at the end of your DNA, excuse me, you have a little thing called a telomere, and it's like the plastic tip on a shoelace, and it holds everything together. Every time the cell replicates or divides in two, a little bit of that telomere is lost. You
Hmm.
go away. If I'm overweight, I'm smoking, I'm have two or three other diseases. All of a sudden, that erosion takes place a lot faster. So I use it when I'm speaking. If I have a roll of pennies, 50 pennies, and inside that roll, every time that my cell divides, I throw a penny away. So that basically
Hmm.
tells me that I can have that cell operate 50 times by division. But if I'm a smoker, if I'm overweight, if I have hypertension, if I maybe I'm throwing away two or three or four pennies every time that cell replicates. Now
Hmm.
that cell has a much shorter lifespan. So the eating right, exercise, all those things we always hear about health go right against that particular aspect of your DNA, right on the tip end of it. So you maintain
Wow.
good nutritional balance, good caloric restriction, stress management, exercise, weight management, all those things add up and give you a longer life, but they also give you an advantage because as you are incorporating these into your lifestyle, they also kind of push away those age related diseases that we typically see come in, to
Hmm.
mention one of them.
And what came first, the public speaking or the books, or did it kind of happen simultaneously? Um, and do you
Well, I've been a
have your books at your events and things like that?
no, I didn't start writing until literally just about 10 years ago. So
Hmm.
all of this stuff is fairly recent with regard. I've been a speaker most of my life. I've been a writer
Hmm.
most of my life. I've written thousands of procedures for companies I've been in. I used to
Hmm.
be involved in training. I was a college instructor for a number of years. So the teaching and the writing and all that stuff has always been part of my life. It wasn't until my wife's breast cancer that I switched over from doing motivational and inspirational kinds of books and speaking to writing about
Hmm.
health and wellness. And so that shift occurred because of that event. Now, my wife,
Hmm.
let's see, 2000, I think this all started about 2013. And so by the time she had surgery and everything and recovered, uh, we had seen a movie called The Way by Martin Sheen about the Camino de Santiago.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I think we were on our eighth honeymoon at the time. And she says, you know,
I love it.
I would almost do it if I could have a private room, private bath every night. She doesn't like to share a room with 400 other people.
Oh,
So,
I agree.
we said we got outfitted for it, got shoes. We started walking. We walked almost every day for a year. We got to Spain. We went over by military space ace, so it didn't cost us anything. We get up into southwestern France and a place called Saint Jean Pied de Port. And so we started walking, and we walked over the Pyrenees Mountains down to uh, I can't think of the name of the city right now. And basically, we walked for 30 days, about 18 miles a day, and made it
Mm.
to the end. And then we spent a few extra days doing. But we ran into people who all they do is they buy shoes and go, and they have all sorts of
Wow.
feet problems, leg problems, and uh, it's interesting the kinds of things. And you ask me what time it is, I'll build you a watch. It's just that's the way I respond.
Yeah. I would love to do the Camino, and I bet you there's a book there. Oh my goodness.
That's one
I
of the
mean, there are several books that have been written, but your personal experience,
yeah.
and your wife's.
And the book is called The Road More no, the Road Less
The
Taken.
road most traveled.
300 to 400,000 people were doing it a year prior to COVID. And so my
Wow.
book is going to have the road more traveled. It's the
Yeah.
opposite of the one that we think of
Road
most,
less traveled.
because
Yes.
my focus. What are we walking on? And it turns out they're old Roman roads that have
Ah,
eroded over time, but they're still
mhm.
there. And you come to this mountain, and the road goes up over the mountain, and you look at a map, and all the other roads go around the mountain. And so
That's crazy.
they pretty much went in a straight line wherever they were going, and
Wow.
it was a lot of fun. We uh, changed things as we got over there. We started as a true pilgrim and uh, didn't know where we were going to end up. And after about 7 days of that nonsense, we said we need a destination, and so we started
Mhm.
ahead and made a reservation, and boom, and the rest is
Good.
history.
Both location destination and emotional destination. How many kilometers can we do each day or miles? How are we going to make this happen? Can we do it in 30 days and all that kind of stuff? So I'm going to shift gears just a little bit. I think you and I are very similar in that once we learn something, we just want to teach it. We want to bring everybody else along. So let's talk a little bit about your book coaching.
Okay.
So you've had several books that you've published yourself, but you also coach other authors. And I know that you've coached Dr. Jacqueline in her Ella, the Active Listening series, which is awesome. So talk a little bit about how you got into book coaching and what that process looks like.
I was actually on one of Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck's shows on the USA Global TV and Radio Network, and I was talking about, well, how do you write and publish a book for free? Well, part of how to write the book is relatively simple. If I said, "Man, tell me about the first car you ever had," you could do that without even thinking. So if you
Mhm,
structure a book as a series of questions of which you know in advance, and you have answers that are in bullet format. So in other words, I have
mhm,
my car, and I have 3 or 4 or 5 bullets that I want to talk about that car. Uh, and in each one of those, I may or may not have a little story because stories are what keeps the interest. So you
mhm,
take and record that, and whether you record it on your cell phone or you record it on a Zoom meeting like we're doing, or a meeting like this, you can take and respond to a question in the order you want to know it, because you don't need notes. You just know everything. So you pick
mhm,
out 10 or 12 or 15. I tell people usually 30, but you want to need about 12 to 15 chapters, questions of what you want to have. So if it was
mhm,
going to be a memoir, it might start out with, well, where were you born? Your parents, your family, the jobs you had, whatever may happen to be, you can do that. If you're a motivational speaker, maybe you're already doing several things, that I approach a slightly different way. But for most of
mhm,
us, uh, having an interview style makes it super easy to answer a question that we know the answer to, have it recorded, and it eliminates 95% of the editing because it's an answer
mhm.
for giving. So that's a very easy way. You can write a book in a weekend. So all you need are the questions. You spend a couple of weeks, you think about the questions, you put your bullets in there, your little stories, and then you have a conversation like we're doing right now, because
Mhm,
I can look forward at you. And if you're doing whatever, but if you have a really good story and I start leaning in, you see my visual reaction. You know you have
your
me.
interest.
And so that
Mm,
kind of gives you some feedback. It's like when I'm speaking to an audience on Zoom, it's not the same as I'm speaking to an audience in person. I can see the expressions on people's body language, eyes, everything. And that gives me instant feedback as to what's going on. So that's
mhm,
one way of writing a book. If I do another one that's called the 13579 method, I have my title of my book. I have 3 things I want to talk about in my book. Let's say I'm talking about health in general. I have heart
mhm,
health, gut health, and brain health. Okay, so that's my 1, 3. Now I want 5. So let's talk about heart health. I need 5 things on heart health that are important. And with each one of those, I want 7 things about it. So if I'm a motivational speaker and I'm speaking on a lot of things, the 135 method may be a much easier way to write because you already know the nuances for each one. So if I'm going down
mhm,
to the 7 levels of this particular part of brain health, I know that one. Then I jump to the next one of the 5 of that brain health. I talk about 7 things there. And so that makes
mhm.
it's a complex subject, but it's like an organizational chart going down because each
Yeah.
part is important, and it makes it much easier to write because you know the topic so well. It's just a matter of you filling in that organizational chart with whatever that bullet is, so that you now can put the 7 bullets under that one, and if you need to go further, but you can come up with, well, 3 things you should do and 4 things you should not do. So it's easy to get to
Mhm.
7. And so there are
Mm-hmm.
a lot of ways of doing it, but just sitting down and doing this on a keyboard, I type about 82 words a minute on the average with very little error. And
Well
so for me,
done. Yeah.
to my fingertips without almost without even thinking. And so I just
Mm-hmm.
through most of that stuff up. That to me is an advantage because a lot of people don't have that. So if
Mm-hmm.
you're trying to do that, now all of a sudden your brain is over here, your fingers are over here, and you end up with
Mm-hmm.
a manuscript, but it needs a lot of editing.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think
now,
you really hit the nail on the head as far as like what you've outlined is a very clear and clever way of doing preparing an outline for your book, and that works really well for the person who is a real outliner. Who you talk about if you sit down and just go, then there's a lot of editing that takes place, but there's something to be said about that method as well because not everybody um, can sit down and do the outline, as you said. However, having a book coach, such as yourself, that would like hold your feet to the fire kind of thing. I think makes that a better or an easier process. Whereas if you're, what we call like a pantser, that is more, I do when I sit down to write. I do exactly the second thing. Like I put every idea that I've got for that particular book, but I mean I'm writing fiction, so it's a little bit different. And then I go back and put some kind of because I don't want to lose any of the ideas, right?
you're
Um,
absolutely right because my methods work very nicely for nonfiction. It would not work for romance, sci-fi,
mm,
westerns, uh, any other kind of book. But if you have a business that's how to, it works very nicely for those kinds of things.
yes.
If I have
Hmm.
a memoir, it works very nicely for that. So there are
Hmm.
some
Hmm.
kinds of books you can write using that. Others, it's a
Hmm.
different animal entirely. And
Hmm.
a cookbook might work for that because you're embracing what the basic ingredients are and why you might want to add a little bit more of this or a little less of this because
Hmm.
of your taste
Hmm.
buds. So there
Hmm.
are probably some other ones in there that would work for it. But for
Yeah,
most
for
people,
sure.
to write a book, just be an author, but most of the time it's a how-to book.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Or you're writing about your expertise. And, if I rewind to my very first book that was traditionally published, long before I jumped into the middle of this whole, was a book about how to get settled in Dubai. I was an expat. I was living in Dubai. It was a publisher who said to me, can you write this book and can you create the formula that if we do other books like it from whatever city, so same as you, it was just kind of like you had to chunk it up. Like, so it was like the opening would be an anecdote, then it was the testimonials, then it was the 5 steps to doing whatever it is that you're doing in that particular chapter. So your formula would have, been a really a nice, method to follow. So, and I love that. And it's like when you're working with an editor to find the editor that you relate to, because I'm not that type of editor, hold your feet to the fire. I'm more nurturing. So, you know what I mean? Some people prefer to be like, just, let's just go, 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 go. And some people prefer the more gentle approach. So I think it's kind of an interesting juxtaposition.
And if you have 30 or 40 questions you developed, maybe you have more than one book because you don't
Yes.
tell a 500-page book. You might want to break it down into 350-page books because it
Yeah.
makes more sense that way. So some people
Hmm.
have the ability to come up with 30 or 40 questions that they really know well
Hmm.
and want to tell the world about, but it doesn't need to be
Hmm.
in a huge book.
Mhm. So, do most of your clients, are they mostly writing how to? I mean, we know that Dr. Jacqueline is writing children's books, and you mentioned how to, how do your clients find you? Are they mostly professionals wanting to write about their expertise, or like, how does that work?
It's almost all word of mouth, ironically. I just was on the phone earlier, just before this meeting, with a guy in the United Kingdom and a woman in California. They're coming out with
Mm-hmm.
a book, and we're trying to combine that into one. I have a German lady who has no arms. She was a thalidomide baby, but she's a motivational speaker. Drop dead gorgeous blonde, and she has a story, and she was looking for. I was on a networking event, and she's asking about ghostwriters. I said, "Let's talk afterwards."
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
she doesn't need to pay buku money to a ghostwriter for what she wanted. So we have a monthly meeting with that. I had a woman down in near Singapore. I can't think of the name. Doesn't matter. But we would meet every Monday morning her time, Sunday night my time, and just the accountability portion of it. But most of the time, I have meetings just basically on Zoom, and okay, where are you at? What's going on? Where are you having problems? And sometimes it's getting started. And I said, well, if chapter 5 is easier to start with chapter 5. Get some comfort level in there. But usually, let's say that you were interested in writing a book and you came to me and I said, okay, let's talk about it. Okay, it's in that genre. Who are your competitors? Oh, you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's go into Amazon and look and see.
Let's research.
Who are the top 25 people? How big are their books? What size dimensionally? How many pages?
Mm-hmm.
What are their prices? What are their categories? What are what's the definition of their book, the writing? And then let's take a look at their covers. What I do with mine, as I said, go buy 5 covers, ebook covers, $5 a piece from Fiverr.com. Put them on social media and say A or B, B or C, because we as authors don't always pick
the feedback.
And so get feedback from the readers as to what's good. So you spend $35-$40 for 5 covers, but they're all different. You don't give them, you give them the same information. Here's the title, subtitle, give them a book cover. I may or may not ever see you again. But if my audience likes B over A, C, and D, and E, then B is my cover. That's it. And I'll back
absolutely.
The paperback and hardcover done from that particular designer. That to me gets my authorship, my readership in conjunction with my book. Now I say
engaged. Yeah.
Now let's say, Anne, you walk through a bookstore and a book cover captures your attention. And it'll make you stop, actually look at the book cover for maybe 3 to 5 seconds. If it's something that looks interesting to you, you may actually pick up that book and look at the back cover for maybe 10 or 12 seconds. If you still have an interest in the book, most people will go to the table of contents. Okay, so you've already held their attention for about 18 seconds. They're going to spend about 20 to 30 seconds looking at
golden.
Don't put in chapter 1, 2, 3, 4. Put in a chapter title name, because if I'm looking at something on possible title series, I want to know what it's. So I go to chapter 5, page 71, and I look at it. So that person's had that book in their hand for maybe a minute, and they're either going to put it back on the shelf or they're going to carry it out of the store with them. So that cover is very important. We don't think of it being that important, but it is super important. So if you look at the top 5 covers, I want my cover to look like one of those covers.
Yeah.
I can send, okay, that's the cover that I want. I send that out saying, okay, here are the colors, here are the font sizes, here's my name, whatever I want. If I want my picture on the cover of my book and nobody in the top 25 has their picture, that's a clue. So there's things that we can do to make our books sell better. And that's one of the, so the research is important on the front end. How do they market their books? Do they have an email list? What does their social media look like? There's a lot of things you start to do before you ever actually write the first word.
Bingo. And so that's 3 extremely key pieces of advice, Red, that you've given, like in quite a nutshell. It's use a professional cover designer. Start your marketing early on, establishing that your platform, and I can't remember what number 3 was. the professional cover design. Oh, the comparable research, finding out who's doing what, and starting early. So I can't believe that how quickly this time has gone. We could do a whole half hour on book marketing.
Your competitor's table of contents. So if you're offering something they're not, then you can say, this is where my book shines where somebody else doesn't.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And so I also, before we wrap up, I want to make sure people know how to find you. Let's just bring this back up. Best place, I'm assuming, is redolaughlin.com.
My books are available at my website, redolaughlin.com, or they're also available on Amazon. Just put in redolaughlin.com. And I have one more book that's been released since that particular one. My website in renovation right now. It's not, it's releasable to the public. I just can't update it until I get trained for the new way of doing it. And I'm in the process of doing
Okay.
that now. So, but
Okay.
Amazon, redolaughlin.com will both get you there.
Okay. And if somebody wants to talk to you about book coaching, can they contact you through your website as well?
At the bottom of my website should be contact information. If not, red.o'laughlin@gmail.com is my preferred contact method. So red, like the color, RED, dot
Mhm.
O'Laughlin, OLAUGHLIN.com. So red.o'laughlin@gmail.com is my preferred method of contact.
Excellent. And what social media can they find you and follow you? Find you on and follow.
Primarily Facebook, LinkedIn. I have almost
Okay.
1,000 original content articles I've written on LinkedIn and Instagram.
Awesome.
Those are the ones that I frequent the most.
Excellent. Red O'Laughlin on LinkedIn and Facebook. And is it an author page on Facebook or
I
just
have both.
your
I have my
profile?
personal and author page on Facebook.
Okay. And I'm going to add those into the comments. I do have your website address, but we'll make sure that people can find you. And I so appreciate you joining me today. This has been a long time coming, and it's just been a delight to share ideas and to get that advice out there. And really appreciate your time, Red.
And thanks very much for inviting me. Appreciate it too.
My pleasure. And we'll see you again, I hope,
I
sometime
hope
soon.
we'll go into the parts we didn't cover. Anyway,
Exactly. So much to cover. Thanks. And thank you for joining us on the author journey today. I'm Anne O'Connell with OC Publishing, and we will see you next week when we have another industry professional author journey discussion every Tuesday afternoon at 4. And so we will see you then. Bye for now.